And here we are once again. Looking for a little audio here, which sounds real good. This is the Andy Alberti Show coming to you on 98.1 FM, Rump, Nevada. Boy, I am so happy to see Joe Biden in office because now we're seeing his true colors. And it ain't pretty. But it's not just Joe Biden. It's all the people that are behind him. I don't think Joe, half the time, just looking at him, I don't think he realizes even what he's saying or doing. I mean, he's not like a stupid man, but these are not gaffes that we're seeing. These is a loss of memory in the middle of a sentence. There is something wrong with that, and there should be more discussion. Because I can't wait to see Kamala Harris take his place. If you think this guy is a problem, wait till she gets in there. Every time she laughs, I have to think to myself, what kind of an idiot can she be? I'm sorry. When somebody gets elected to be the president and vice president of our country, I really want them to do a good job for our people who live here, who are the citizens. I really don't want them to do a good job by taking away the benefits we've created by working our asses off and just give them away to other countries where there's no benefit to us. You have to ask yourself, why do these people in politics, in the Congress and the Senate, why do they want to give away all this foreign aid money to countries that don't like us? They're not buying favoritism. Here's my take on it. We don't know where that money goes once it leaves here. But we do know some of it may come back to the very people authorizing the expenditure to be made. And as you know, the Republicans have been complaining about this latest financial rescue of the citizens of the country when the majority of the money is going out of the country. What could we possibly be thinking? I think it's time for a big change. But the trouble is, the people that are running the country right now, that have full control over the Senate, the House, and the presidency, they're the ones that are going to create the new country you're going to live in. And as far as the Republicans are concerned that have been elected to office at the federal level, I don't see very many of them I would allow in my house. And some of the judges that have been appointed and some of the district attorneys in other states must have to have their heads examined. I think there should be a rule that a judge, when he releases somebody into society that's a murderer and a rapist, they should have to go live in his house along with his family. And let's see how many of those then get released into the public domain. You know, you hear rape and it doesn't sound like a big deal. You know, okay, so they got raped, but it is a big deal. That's a total violation of your personal space. And many times it's violent. You get beat up in the process. Those people should not be allowed back on the street. I'm sorry, I don't care about that. I don't care what anybody thinks. My opinion is that you should not be allowed on the street. And I really don't want, I'll bet you if the penalty was more severe, other than you just go to jail and we pay for your medical, food, and lodging for the rest of your life, I don't really want to pay for that. As far as I'm concerned, we ought to ship them out. Russia knows how to deal with those kinds of folks. So does Africa. So does Venezuela, I think. It's just us. We're too nice. Now, there may be times when a rape is accidental. I can't imagine that. anybody could even think that way. But I'd love to hear some of these cases in court and see what the argument is about why that took place. So now we have all the liberals. Now, listen, there's good people with liberal ideas that I would like to listen to, but I can't listen to these jerks that are running the country right now. They're screwing up the border. They're screwing up the finances. They're sending money to foreign countries that we have to pay. We're borrowing that money that they're sending to foreign countries. What, are we nuts? But ask any Democrat and they'll tell you that this is a good thing. I want somebody to tell me what benefit we have derived from sending money to foreign countries and foreign aid that have benefited us. I would much rather have that money go to buy things that come here so we can make products, so we can be in manufacturing. Now, we got more manufacturing that's left this country than you can imagine. I used to be in an industry that called on manufacturing, and we kept seeing companies disappear. There was a time when I worked in Orange County, and I used to call on a bowling ball manufacturer. Actually, it was AMF Voigt. I actually met Bill Voigt. And at that time in the 70s, they were moving the whole factory assembly line to Mexico. The labor there was so cheap that even if they screwed up production every day, they actually made more money than they did if they were in this country. So when I go back and I say I'm really glad to see Joe Biden and his motley crew, they're in there they're giving money away again. I don't know who's getting it all, but you can bet your bottom dollar people that have contributed to his campaign are getting slugs of money into their checking accounts. This is not good for us. Old people will not be around to have to pay off that debt or have to deal with the trauma when it turns out that the US dollar is not the gold standard anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not the gold standard anymore. That was just a piece of paper. And as long as the US government says it's legal tender, it doesn't matter what kind of paper it is, it's still paper. You used to be able to go to the bank and turn in a silver certificate, which was a $1 bill, or you could turn in a gold certificate, and you could actually get real gold and silver. Until the politicians realized that they didn't have to have anything backing the gold other than their promise, or I shouldn't say their promise, their mandate that if somebody owed you a bill, that they could give you the kind of money you have today. And most people don't know what fiat money is, but you ought to read about it. Talk to your banker the next time you go to the bank and ask the teller at the bank why they continue to use fiat money. And when you get that blank stare, just take it and run. Go someplace else. They should at least know what the money is all about. By the way, I was at, speaking of banks, I was at American First National Bank today. And it was kind of like Old Home Week. You can actually go in the bank again. Things are looking up, folks. Joe Biden is making the world great. And I'm looking forward to it. And what are the Republicans doing? You know, you watch television or listen to the radio, and you hear all these guys in Washington, in the Senate, in the House, whining and complaining about what the Democrats are doing now that they have the power. And to my way of thinking and observing, there's only a few Republicans in office that have any idea about how to deal with the situation. I think the strategy, somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you think the strategy is for the Republican Party to take back the Congress in 2022 and 2024? I'm sorry, 21, 22, and 21, 24. Well, I think the strategy is this. We whine and complain about it until election time comes, and then hope we can change the way uh, the people who are in government, that those who have been elected are out. But what if they're not? Shouldn't the Republicans that are in office, at least I'm a conservative. I like to think I have libertarian leanings, and I would like to see them know what to do. It seems like only Democrats are smart enough and have the cojones enough to fight when they're out of power. I mean, they went at when Trump was in power and the Republicans had control in the House, in the Senate rather. The Democrats knew how to fight. And then when Trump said he was there fighting for you, they said that he was creating problems in the country. And yet every Democrat, when they were campaigning in office, said they would fight for you, fight for freedom, fight for everything. Boy. And the idiots that went out there and voted for this guy to be in office, they knew there was something wrong with him. He didn't even campaign. He sat in his house. But I heard many years ago that the Democrats used to claim that they could elect anybody. Didn't matter. Just put somebody in front of us and we'll get them elected. And that's what happened here. So all of you Joe Biden fans, you're bringing it on yourself. There's nothing that you can do to stop this other than to join the Republicans that have some backbone. It isn't enough to be elected and think that politics is your career. As far as I'm concerned, career politicians are the problem. These guys get in there, they get elected, and then they lie to you. Here's the big lie. They told you they had term limits. And it's true. The term limit applied to the office that you held. But if you got term limited out in that office, let's say you're a state assemblyman and you've run the course and now the 12 years are up, you can't hold that office anymore. You can't be elected to it. What do? You go run for another office, state senate, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, you name it. So really what they've done is they have given themselves license to collect all the benefits of being a government elected official, all the perks and power that go with it, to a lifetime of benefits. Now, I think that they should be communicating with us more. You know, they have this thing called a franking privilege at the Congress, and they can send out mail to their constituents. But they don't even have to do that anymore. I get emails, tons of them, from people in politics wanting to tell me why I should send them money. Right. I think it's time that the American people stood up, because when the national debt has grown to the point where every citizen owes $85,000 to pay off the debt, and there's no stopping it in sight, they're giving stuff away like no tomorrow. Tough, really tough. And if you speak out about it, I mean, I'm listening to the woke people. Woke? What happened to the awake people? Somebody comes along, you know, you got to laugh. I'm watching this administration, and not just this administration, it started before this one. Somebody complains that they're offended by a statement somebody made. You can't say Negro anymore. You have to say black person. What was wrong with being Negro? You're still the same person. So they're telling you what words you can use, and if you don't use it, you can lose your job. Or you can be shamed in public. one person gets offended and we have to write a law to protect that individual's offensiveness. Well, I'm here to say today that I am not woke. I will not be woke. And all of you guys that think, and men and women who think you're woke, the term idiot applies. You're destroying the very country that gave you the right to speak out. But when you in government, when you as citizens demand the government tell the rest of us what we have to do and say, you've gone beyond the pale. And I think that's where we are today. Under this Joe Biden administration, this guy is writing law without going through Congress and the House and the Senate. I'm impressed. The Democrats have cojones. They are really doing. Oh, but does it really matter? Probably not. Now they're looking for one of the liberal Supreme Court justices I refer to as the Supremes. They're looking for one of the Supremes, I think it's Breyer. They want him to retire early so they can appoint a liberal justice while the Democrats control all the offices in our government. Because they were losing ground when Trump was president. But aren't judges supposed to not have their personal interest when they look at cases? And yet we look at it and we see that they do. They have their own slant on what words mean. When they say that rioters are burning this town in Portland and in Washington and other cities, that these are peaceful demonstrations, are you actually blind to what your very eyes see? When Jerry Nadler was stopped by news media and asked about the riots, he said, there's no riot. I don't see any riots. There are peaceful demonstrations. And yet, when those peaceful demonstrations wound up at the Capitol, suddenly that was a riot, an insurrection. There was a message for the people in government, and that is that the citizens who care about this country don't like what they're doing. I'm telling you, this is not a simple matter. And we can talk about it all day, every day, all we want. But the day is going to come, I think, when it's going to become very, very serious. People don't like to continuously be told what to do. Here's an example. If you recall when the Jimmy Carter days, when the world was coming to an end and we were running out of oil, and they determined that you had to drive no faster than 55 miles an hour in order to conserve fuel before we really ran out. And, you know, the people, they don't care about 55 miles an hour. They had lives to live, businesses to run. So many times they would be speeding based on that national dictate about the speed limit. Now, you know, really, the federal government did not have the power under the Constitution to mandate that 55 mile an hour speed limit. I don't know how many of you out there remember this, but the federal government mandated 55 miles an hour in every state of the union. Even on the open road where you've got 200 miles between one town and another in Texas, 55 miles an hour. And here's how they did it. They threatened every state that refused to enforce the 55 mile an hour speed limit with withholding funds. It was that simple. The states had learned to live under the umbrella as government largesse, sending taxpayer money to the states so that the states could expand. But in reality, when the money went from the state to the federal government, and then the federal government decided who should get that money, why don't they just leave it at the state level? That argument went on for a long time. Still goes on today. That there's an expense to send money to the federal government and have them return it back to the states. Even today, the federal government was returning money to that. Let me rephrase that. They were creating money to send to the states. And what is Nevada doing with the money? And what is right here in Nye County, perfect example, right here. If you watched the commission meeting the other day, the argument was most of the money that the county was getting as grants was being spent on county government. And the very people who've lost their businesses, lost their homes, or in financial distress were getting a pittance. This is sickening. And now I want to mention one of our council city commissioners, Leo Blunder. Leo and I don't see eye to eye all the time. I don't see eye to eye with everybody all the time, so there's nothing new about that. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And Leo is the only commissioner to stand up at a commission meeting and speak out for the benefit of people that have businesses and other problems here in Nye County. And too much money going into government, not enough money going into the citizens to help recover. For that, I applaud Leo. As a matter of fact, I guess I would have liked to have seen a second commissioner chime in, but it was kind of like looking at the Punch and Judy show. One guy gets up to speak his piece, and he doesn't do it as a commissioner. He steps down from his commissioner position to speak as a citizen. And there may be good reasons for doing it that way. That's up to Leo. But to me, at least he spoke the truth. Why would all that money go to run government, to build a bigger bureaucracy? Why? Why is it that the citizens are the last to be cared for, but the first to be penalized? And that brings me to the Clark County commissioners. Now, that's not Nye County, but this stuff goes on everywhere. And there was an article recently about a sunset clause on a sales tax that was promised to be retired this year. When they wrote the legislation, they said that there was a sunset clause, and that extra is a very small fraction. It raised about $50 million in Clark County. To them, that's not a lot of money. And it was like a 1/8% addition to their sales tax. And now they've decided that they can't do without that money. So they're discussing waiving the requirement to see a sunset on that money so that they can continue to have it. Now, when I say the stupid people out there think that these guys are doing a good job, when I used to go and speak at high school political science classes, and this was in Orange County, California, I would get invited as a guest speaker. And I would talk about this. I would talk about when they first raised the income tax, and it was 10% income tax was the limit. And everybody said, well, wait a minute. If that's the limit, it's going to be 10%. Forget about anything less because that's the limit. Everybody will be there. You're not at 10% anymore. If you look at your income tax and all the taxes you pay, it's over 60 to 70% of your income that you pay in taxes. Everything you touch, everything you buy, every place you go. As a matter of fact, not everything is a tax that government charges. Sometimes they call it a fee. I'm sorry, every fee is a tax. That same thing that went on in that's going on in Clark County right now about that sunset clause went on with the state. When the state implemented an extra sales tax on cigarettes, it was to have grants for people to go to college for their education. But then more and more people stopped smoking, and there wasn't hardly any money coming in compared to what they were getting in the beginning. So guess what? Everybody said, well, we better keep that program anyway because there's benefits to it. Well, who gets the benefit? The people who were smoking have to pay the extra tax, which means they have less money to spend on other things. We are turned upside down, and I'm watching Joe Biden and his woke people. They don't even have good language skills. Woke? They're taking us down that path, folks, and the Republicans are no better than the Democrats. And there is a third party that tries to speak out, but nobody wants to hear it because we've all been sold a bill of goods that we need a two-party system. I don't think so. I think we need a third party to go in there and shake this up. And let's be real about all of this. Somebody runs for office, and they tell you they're going to fix everything, and they're going to be one of 435 people in the House of Representatives, and they're going to fix everything. If they try to fix it, they're going to have an office in the basement without lighting, because that's the way it works. Get a guy like Mitch McConnell. The guy, his wife was, can you imagine Mitch McConnell's wife was running the transportation department? And then they brought an ethics complaint against her. This had to do with international shipping. And she decided to resign her position. And then they decided there was no sense in pursuing the ethics because she resigned. Not a good move. As far as I'm concerned, that's a bad move. They should still pursue ethics. And then there's this one guy in college who wasn't allowed to preach on campus. And the college changed its policy, so there was no reason for him to go to court to sue. But in reality, he has to go to court to sue, because when the college just changes its rules, there's nothing to prevent it from coming back when he's gone. So now he's suing for $1 because it's the principle of the thing. And if he wins the lawsuit, then every college will have to pay attention to the free speech issue, that First Amendment right that we hear so much about, that you can't say certain words, that you can't say certain phrases, but somebody can be offended and nobody else can say what they can like to say anymore. You got to think about this. You really got to think about it. If you are a Democrat and you see this going on, what if the Republicans were doing what you see your party doing? There would be hell to pay. And the Republicans in office are too nice. When was the last time you heard Mark Amadei speak out? Mark Amadei was willing to impeach Trump. And he had no clue what was going on. All he knew was he's a career politician and he wanted to keep his job. So I know I've been on a bit of a rant and covered a lot of ground here, not being too specific about one particular item, but I think you get the overall picture. We're going down to hell in a handbasket. And it's no joke. That price that you pay in the supermarket these days is the evidence of what's happening. I can remember buying oatmeal for $2.50 for the giant container, and now it was $5. All right, so we're coming up on a break, and after the break, I'm going to continue on a different topic, and we'll see how that goes. So, Mr. Producer, I'm going to take a minute's break here and refresh my tonsils.